Okay, thanks boys and girls, and we're on to the second video now on this algebra. So if we have a look at question A here, and this is all about indices, which is very much similar to the stuff that we were doing earlier. So as we had a look earlier, when we divide, we actually subtract the powers. So x to the power of 4 divided by x to the power of minus 3. 4 take away minus 3. Now remember, 4 take away minus 3 means 4 plus 3, so that's going to be x to the power of 7. Now, the thing that makes this different to what we were doing earlier is because we're starting to use fractional powers mostly, and then occasionally some indices powers. If we have a look at the next one, x to the power of a half times by x to the power of 3 halves, what we're going to do is we're going to add the powers together. So 1 half plus 3 halves is 4 halves. It's going to be x to the power of 4 halves, but 4 halves is 4 divided by 2, which equals just x to the power of 2. Okay, again, all this needs to be in your notebook. The next one, x to the power of 3, the power of 2/3. Now, just like we said earlier, when we've got a set of brackets and we've got powers outside the brackets, we need to multiply them together. So we're going to do 3 times by 2/3. Now, if I'm going to do 3 times by 2/3, remember 3 can be written as 3 over 1. And when we're multiplying fractions, we do the top times the top, bottom times the bottom. So 3 times 2 is going to be 6, 1 times 3 is going to be 3, so 6 over 3, which again is 2. Alternatively, you don't need to put that divided by 1 there. You could just do 3 times 2 is 6, so 3 times 2 is 6, then you divide it by the 3 to get 2. Either way, you end up getting the answer x to the power of 2. Let's have a look. So that was question C. Now question D. You've got 2x to the power of 1.5 divided by 4x to the power of minus 0.25. So if we start with numbers, so we do the 2 divided by the 4 first of all. So 2 divided by 4 is 0.5. And then we've got x divided by, x to the power of 1.5 divided by x to the power of minus 0.25. So that's going to be, if we subtract the powers, so again, we've got 1.5 take away minus 0.25, so that's a plus. So it's going to be x to the power of 1.75. Now, in these sorts of questions, we don't even need to know what any of that means. But that's the next thing that we're going to start to do. So, we're now going to have a look at what these actually mean here, what the power of a half means. Now again, a lot of this should ring bells from GCSE. So if we've got A, 9 to the power of a half. The power of a half means a square root. So that's the same as the square root of 9. And it's really, really important. I know it might be mentioned to at GCSE, but now it's really important at A level that when you do the square root of 9, there's a positive square root and there's a negative square root. So the square root of 9 is either 3 or minus 3. And that's because 3 times 3 is 9, and because two negatives make a positive, when you multiply them, minus 3 times minus 3 is also 9. So we've got 2 solutions here. B, 64 to the power of a third. Now, the number on the bottom of the fraction, that's the root. So what we can do is we do the cube root of 64. So what that means, that's the cube root of 64. So what that means is something times by something times by something equals 64. And again, if you're not savvy with this, you can just do trial and error. So 2 times 2 times 2, so 2 times 2 is 4, times by 2 is 8. It's not going to be that one. 3 times 3 is 9, times by 3 is 27, but 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. So we can say it's 64 to the power of a third equals 4. Now, you notice that last time I said that a square root is either going to be 3 or minus 3. But here, because it's a cube root, it's not going to be 4 or minus 4. The reason that the cube root of 64 is 4 is because 4 times 4 times 4 equals 64. So think about what happens when we do it with a negative number. Minus 4 times by minus 4 is going to be 16. Times it by minus 4 again, that's going to be minus 64. So therefore, the sort of shortcut to thinking about it is, if you've got an odd number on the bottom, it won't be plus or minus. If you've got an even number on the bottom, it will be plus or minus. And that's quite important. Okay, now let's have a look at question C. Because again, these questions are starting to get harder now. And the questions that we do tomorrow in class, they're going to be quite tricky and quite taxing. And it's going to mean that you understand everything that we're doing here really well. So again, make your notes, watch a video, re-watch a video, make sure that you know what's going on. So we've got 49 to the power of 3 over 2. Now, the bottom of the fraction, that's the root. The top of the fraction is the power. So what we're going to do is we're going to deal with the bottom first of all. So we're going to deal with this 2. So that means the square root. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the square root of 49. I'm going to put that in brackets. And in the top, up here, it's going to be the power. So we're going to raise that to the power of 3. Now the square root of 49, that equals either plus or minus 7. Because remember, it's the square root, so you've got plus and minus to the power of 3. So you've got to do 7 times 7 times 7, and minus 7 times minus 7 times minus 7. So 7 times 7 is 49, times by 7 again is 343. So the answer, and we can write it like this, is either plus 343 or minus 343. So that's question C. Question D. Let me just script that so we've got a little bit more room to manoeuvre. So we've got 25 to the power of minus 3 over 2. Now the first thing we do with this thing here is we deal with the negatives. So the negative part of the power, all that means is that we've got to flip it upside down. So it's going to be, instead of being 25 to the power of 3 over 2, we're going to turn it into 1 over 25 to the power of 3 over 2. I think it means we've got an E in there. So now we do exactly the same as we did last time. So we're going to deal with the bottom first of all. So that means the square root. And when we do the square root, we're going to do the square root of the top number and the square root of the bottom number. It's going to be plus and minus. If we do the square root of 1, we get 1. If we do the square root of 25, we get 5. So if we do the square root of 1 over 25, we get plus and minus 1/5. And then what we're going to do is we deal with the top. So it's going to be cubed. So your answer is going to be plus and minus. 1 cubed is 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. And on the bottom is going to be 5 cubed. So it's going to be 5 times 5 times 5. So that's going to be 125. Now, for the sake of a further explanation, which I think this could probably do with, what we can now do is have a look at what's... In fact, let's answer this question. So let's stick question E on the end again for your notes. Let's go 30... No, let's make it a little bit trickier. 64 over 27 to the power of minus 2/3. Now again, just like in question D over here, the first thing we did is we dealt with this minus sign, and we did that by making it 1 over 25. But here we've got a fraction. So rather than writing 1 over 64 over 27, we can just flip that fraction upside down. 27 over 64. And again, it's important that you really take note of that, because this happens an awful lot. So what we can do is when we've got a fraction, we're going to flip that fraction upside down. So instead of being 64 over 27, we've got 27 over 64, and then we can make it positive. And then, after that, we're going to deal with the bottom of the fraction. That's going to be the root. Then we're going to raise it to the top, which is the power. Now notice it's a 3 on the bottom, so it's not going to be plus or minus. So what we've got to do is we've got to do the cube root of 64, and we've got to do the cube root of 27. So the cube root of 64, something times something times something is 64, and we did that a second ago, and that's going to be 4. The cube root of 27 means something times something times something is 27, so that's going to be 3. So if we do the cube root of 27 over 64, we get 3 over 4. And then we've got to raise it to the power of 2. So then if we do that, 3 squared is going to be 9, and 4 squared is going to be 16. So we get the answer 9 over 16. Okay, well done guys. What we'll do tomorrow is we'll go through all of these in class, and we can start doing loads and loads of questions on these. Well done, and thank you very much.